Life has a very strange way of teaching us lessons. Think about it. You are sitting at your desk in Manhattan at 8 p.m., staring at a spreadsheet that is not even yours, drowning in exhaustion just because you could not say no to a colleague. You cling to the hope that this endless sacrifice will finally get you that big promotion. But deep down, you already know the truth. When the time comes, they will pass you over again. It is a frustrating struggle, a toxic spiral. What if I told you that your goodness is exactly what is destroying your career? If you stay until the end, you will reclaim a power you did not know you lost. The real power lies in a brutal truth. You are not a good person, you are just too afraid to say no. How many times have you clicked send on an email agreeing to an absolutely ridiculous request from your boss, only to feel a sharp, burning wave of anger rush straight down your spine? You sit there, staring at the screen, your heart racing, feeling utterly violated by your own compliance. Yet, you tell yourself you did the right thing. You tell yourself that this is what being a team player looks like, that this is how you build a reputation, and that eventually your endless compliance will be rewarded. But the reality of modern corporate life is much colder. This relentless desire to please everyone around you isn't a virtue. In the professional world, it is a psychological trap known as the pleaser's paradox. We live in a culture that praises the overachiever, the person who never says no, the one who carries the weight of the entire department on their back. We are conditioned to believe that if we just make everyone else happy, if we remove every obstacle for our colleagues, we will become indispensable. The truth is, the exact opposite happens. When you make yourself endlessly available, your value doesn't increase, it plummets to zero. You aren't seen as a leader, you are seen as a utility. A reliable piece of office equipment that can be used whenever needed and ignored when it's time for recognition. This constant striving to manage how other people perceive you, to orchestrate their approval, is actually a hidden form of reverse narcissism. You secretly believe that you possess the grand power to control everyone's emotions and opinions. You think that by bending your spine low enough, you can guarantee their validation. Think about an artist standing in a crowded gallery, holding a brush. Instead of painting from their own vision, they turn to the audience and ask every single person what color they should use next. One person yells red, another demands blue, someone else insists on black. The artist, desperate to make every viewer happy, frantically applies every suggestion to the canvas. What do you think the final painting looks like? It becomes a chaotic, muddy, ugly mess that absolutely nobody wants to look at. By trying to please every critic in the room, the artist destroys the artwork. This is exactly what you are doing to your career. Every time you accept a task that isn't yours, every time you let a co-worker dump their responsibilities onto your desk, you add another messy brushstroke to your professional life. You blur your own focus, dilute your expertise, and drown your actual potential in a sea of meaningless busywork. You are running yourself ragged, exhausting your mental bandwidth, and spiraling into deep resentment, all for an illusion of security. The fear of isolation, the dread of being left out or disliked by your corporate peers, drives you to keep grasping for their approval. You cling to their smiles and their brief words of validation like a lifeline. But happiness and career fulfillment cannot be built on something you can't fully control. The more you force yourself to fit into everyone else's expectations, the more frustrated and trapped you will feel. To understand why we fall so deeply into this quicksand of compliance, we have to look at the way ancient Stoic philosophers viewed power. They understood that the ultimate trap is trying to control external things while completely neglecting the empire within. Number 1. Draw your circle of control. Centuries ago, the Stoic philosopher Epictetus was born into slavery. He had no control over his social status, his physical body, or the master who owned him. Yet, he became one of the freest minds in human history. How? Because he mastered a single, foundational concept that he called the dichotomy of control. Epictetus taught that some things are up to us, while others are not. Up to us are our opinions, our motivations, our desires, and our boundaries, everything that is our own doing. Not up to us are our reputation, our position, and the actions of others. He argued that all human suffering, all anxiety, and every ounce of resentment come from a single mistake, trying to control what belongs outside of us, while neglecting what lies within. Let's look at how this plays out in the modern world. Imagine a brilliant software engineer working at a high-profile tech company in Silicon Valley. He wants so desperately to be liked and validated by his team. He volunteers for every extra project, covers for his co-workers' mistakes, and regularly stays up until 3 a.m. writing code. Every time he finishes a task, he refreshes Slack, waiting anxiously for his manager to drop a simple thumbs up or fire emoji on his update. His entire self-worth is tied to that digital validation. He tells himself that if he just pushes a little harder, if he makes himself completely indispensable to the company, he will guarantee his safety and his future. But then, a sudden economic shift hits the industry. The executive board in a closed room decides to cut costs by 10%. One morning, our engineer wakes up to find his corporate accounts completely locked. He is placed on a massive layoff list, discarded alongside hundreds of others. He spirals into absolute despair and anger, feeling completely betrayed. But trust me, the betrayal didn't come from the company. The betrayal came from his own mindset. He spent months desperately grasping for something he never truly owned: his manager's approval, the company's financial stability, and the ultimate outcome of his employment. He poured all of his emotional energy into an external reality that could be wiped away by a single board decision. He ignored his own internal circle of control. So how do you practice this inside a high-pressure office environment without losing your mind? You must learn to draw a sharp, unforgiving line down the middle of your professional life. You must implement a simple rule. You are completely responsible for the quality of your output, but you are not responsible for the emotional reaction of the person receiving it. When you hand in a project on time and to the highest standard, your job is completely done. If your manager is having a stressful day, if they are projectively toxic, or if they fail to give you the praise you think you deserve, that belongs entirely outside your circle. You cannot control their mood, their insecurities, or their corporate biases. The moment you stop tying your internal peace to their external reactions, a massive weight lifts off your shoulders. You stop operating from a place of fear and desperation, and you start moving with a sense of calm authority. You no longer need to over-explain your choices or apologize for having boundaries. You simply do your work with excellence, protect your space, and let the rest fall where it may. That is the true power of the dichotomy of control. Number 2, realize the cost of being free. Think about walking down a busy street in Chicago or New York on a hot summer day. You pass by a public drinking fountain. The water is running, completely free, and available to anyone who walks by. Millions of people pass it every single day, but nobody stops to admire it. Nobody protects it. Nobody treats it as something of high value. Why? Because it is endlessly available. It costs nothing to access, requires zero effort to get, and carries no scarcity. Now, imagine a traveler lost in the middle of the Mojave Desert. Their throat is parched, their energy is completely drained, and they are down to their very last ounce of strength. If you handed that person a single bottle of clean water, that bottle becomes the most precious, priceless asset in their entire world. They would give you everything they own just to secure it. The water itself hasn't changed. Its chemical composition is exactly the same as the water flowing from the city fountain. What changed is its availability. The truth is, when you say yes to everyone, your words completely lose their weight. You think you are building professional capital by being the most helpful person in the office, but you are actually doing the exact opposite. You are transforming yourself into that public drinking fountain, because you are always there, always ready to take on extra work, and always willing to sacrifice your own time to fix other people's problems. Your team stops viewing your help as a valuable gift. They begin to view it as a permanent utility. They expect you to absorb their stress, clean up their rushed mistakes, and carry their deadlines without ever demanding anything in return. Your over-availability doesn't make you look like a future leader. It makes you look like a cheap, expendable resource. You are teaching your entire corporate environment that your time has no cost, your boundaries do not exist, and your personal energy is completely free for the taking. This isn't dedication. It is a slow, quiet surrender of your professional identity. If you are starting to recognize your own daily habits in this story, take a brief moment right now. Hit the subscribe button. It takes just a fraction of a second, but it helps us continue this journey of reclaiming your focus and building a life of true authority. The ancient Stoics understood that true value is always tied to how fiercely you protect your internal resources. Seneca once wrote about how shocking it is that humans will aggressively defend their physical property from intruders, yet they will completely allow others to walk right into their minds and steal their time without a second thought. He argued that our time is the only truly finite resource we possess, yet it is the one asset we waste most carelessly. When you constantly compromise your own schedule to please a colleague or placate an aggressive boss, you are letting them rob you of your most precious asset. You are trading your long-term career growth and your mental clarity for a brief, fleeting moment of superficial approval. You must break out of this loop. You must stop letting the fear of being disliked dictate your schedule. Start treating your attention, your skills, and your energy as a premium bottle of water in the desert, not an open tap in the street. Now, let's talk about how to actually execute this shift in your daily routine. Number 3. Master the art of the unemotional refusal. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius was arguably the most powerful man of his era, controlling an empire that spanned across continents. Every single day, he was surrounded by thousands of people desperately grasping for his attention, his favors, and his approval. He was constantly exposed to political scheming, intense social pressure, and the endless demands of corporate-like Roman bureaucracy. Yet, if you read his personal journal, which we now know as Meditations, you will notice an incredible sense of inner calm. He wrote, "Say to yourself in the morning, I shall meet with people who are ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, and unsocial. They can neither harm me nor implicate me in ugliness, nor can I be angry with them." Marcus Aurelius understood a profound psychological truth. You do not have to absorb the chaos of others. You do not owe the world an apology for maintaining your own sanity. He practiced the ultimate form of emotional detachment, protecting his focus so he could govern with absolute clarity. Now, let's bring this ancient imperial wisdom straight into the modern office. Have you ever noticed what happens when a classic people-pleaser tries to say no? It turns into a desperate, frustrated struggle. They start stammering, over-explaining, and manufacturing long, elaborate excuses. They say things like, "Oh, I am so incredibly sorry. I really wish I could help you with this spreadsheet, but my car broke down yesterday, and my kid has a dentist appointment, and I am just so overwhelmed." What are you actually doing when you do this? You are practically begging the other person for permission to say no. You are showing them your weaknesses, giving them a roadmap to dismantle your excuses and cross your boundaries. An aggressive colleague or a manipulative manager will easily see through this defense and push right past it, leaving you feeling resentful and trapped once again. The alternative is what the Stoics mastered: an effortless flow of calm, unyielding boundaries. You do not need to create a massive office drama or become aggressively hostile to protect your time. You simply need to deliver a firm refusal, completely stripped of emotional static or false guilt. Imagine it is 4:30 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. Your manager walks over to your desk or drops a sudden urgent message on your screen, attempting to dump a massive, low-priority task onto your plate that will completely ruin your weekend. Instead of spiraling into panic or launching into a long, defensive explanation, You apply the imperial strategy. You type a message that is short, professional, and entirely unmovable. You write, "I would love to support the team, but my current schedule is fully optimized for Project A to ensure we hit our core deadline on time." Notice exactly what happens in that response. There is no frantic apologizing. There is no long list of personal reasons. You are simply presenting your availability as a static, unchangeable reality, like a mountain facing the wind. You are not fighting against their request. You are merely stating a factual conflict in resources. The truth is, when you stop over-explaining, people stop pushing. They respect your time because you clearly respect it yourself. That is the incredible power of an unemotional refusal. Number 4. Embrace the superpower of being disliked. The ancient Stoics lived by a profound philosophy known as amor fati, the love of one's fate. It means not merely tolerating the difficult, messy parts of reality, but actively choosing to embrace them as necessary fuel for your personal growth. In the corporate world, this translates to something incredibly practical. You must learn to accept, and even welcome, the friction that comes when you draw firm boundaries. We are terrified of the cold silence that follows a rejection. We panic when a colleague stops smiling at us by the office coffee machine, or when we notice our names are left out of a casual group lunch invitation. We treat disapproval like a fatal threat to our career survival. But what if you reframed that entire situation? What if you realize that being disliked by certain people is not a failure, but a highly effective natural filter? The truth is, the individuals who get upset when you finally say no are almost always the ones who benefited from you never saying it in the first place. By stepping back and letting them experience their own discomfort, you aren't being cruel. You are simply forcing a toxic dynamic to clear itself out of your space. Think about a brilliant chess master calculating their next move on the board. A professional player doesn't panic or freeze in fear when they lose a few minor pawns. They don't obsess over keeping every single piece perfectly safe and untouched on the field. They understand that sacrifices are an absolute necessity to maintain the momentum of the game. They only care about one thing: preserving their overall strategic position and keeping the leverage. When you constantly drain your own energy, trying to keep every coworker happy, you are playing a losing game. You are scattering your focus, giving up your leverage, and allowing your entire career to be dictated by people who do not have your long-term success in mind. In the final part of this video, I am going to show you exactly how to transform this passive, defensive stance into a highly strategic leverage point for your ultimate promotion. But before you can execute that advanced level of corporate strategy, you must first learn how to sit comfortably in the heavy, awkward silence that happens right after you say no. You have to train your mind to stop rushing in to fix other people's disappointment. Take a moment and ask yourself honestly, whose superficial approval am I keeping alive at the direct expense of my own peace of mind? What bad behavior am I quietly enabling just because I am terrified of a brief confrontation? The moment you stop running away from that tension, you reclaim a massive amount of mental clarity. You stop allowing yourself to be manipulated like a piece on someone else's board. The real tragedy of modern professional life isn't that people might dislike you. The real tragedy is that you might spend years bending over backward, trying to please everyone, only to realize you lost your own identity in the process. Someone who is genuinely terrified of ever displeasing anyone will never have anyone truly loyal to them. We have traveled through a profound landscape of human psychology and ancient philosophy today. We looked at the heavy chains of the pleaser's paradox, examined Epictetus's strict circle of control, analyzed the economic reality of personal availability, and discovered the quiet power of an unemotional refusal. When you piece all of these lessons together, a massive, unshakable truth begins to emerge. Corporate life, especially within the fiercely competitive environment of modern America, is designed to test your boundaries. It is a system that naturally consumes whatever you are willing to freely give up, and it will continuously demand more until you are completely hollowed out. But the real power lies in realizing that the corporate matrix isn't your enemy. Your own desire for external validation is the true architect of your exhaustion. Trust me, life and a career in this hyper-competitive landscape is not about controlling what other people think of you. It is entirely about mastering your own responses. When you stop desperately grasping for the fragile approval of your managers or the superficial smiles of your peers, you finally unlock a state of effortless flow. You transition from a passive piece being moved across the board into the active chess master of your own professional destiny. You begin to understand that protecting your time, securing your focus, and establishing uncompromising boundaries isn't selfish. It is the ultimate act of self-respect. It is how you ensure that when you actually show up to perform, you are delivering your absolute best work, rather than a diluted, resentful fragment of your potential. Reclaiming your personal power requires you to step away from the frustrated struggle of people pleasing and lean directly into the calm certainty of self-mastery. It means looking at a mountain of office demands and knowing exactly what belongs inside your circle and what must be left to the wind. You are no longer a public utility always running for anyone to use. You are a premium resource, and your presence carries a clear cost. The truth is, this deep-seated compliance, this constant urge to bend your spine and appease everyone around you, almost always stems from a much deeper, more paralyzing insecurity. It is the primitive fear of failure. We convince ourselves that if we just say yes to every single person, we can build an artificial safety net that protects us from professional disaster. But all we are doing is guaranteeing our own stagnation. To completely break this cycle, to fracture that fear of failure down to its very roots and move through your career with absolute confidence, you need a different strategy. You need to understand how to handle the inevitable storms of life without flinching. To discover exactly how the greatest Stoic minds navigated massive economic crises and personal disasters without ever losing their inner peace, click on the video appearing on your screen right now. Let us step into the next chapter of reclaiming your focus and building true authority together.